Cale Morrison was a freelance extraction specialist, which was a professional way of saying he retrieved people from places they weren't supposed to be retrieved from. Governments hired him when situations were too politically sensitive for official channels. Corporations used him when valuable assets needed recovering. And occasionally, resistance groups scraped together enough money to hire him when one of their own faced execution. This job fell into that last category. The contract was straightforward on paper. Extract Dr. Nuraves, a Silvani scientist, from Coalition Detention Facility 7 before her scheduled execution in 48 hours. The Silvani were a species currently out of favor in coalition politics. Distinctive pointed ears, skin that shifted through dark muted colors, and the misfortune of being scapegoated after a diplomatic incident left them politically vulnerable. Dr. Nuraves had been convicted of espionage and illegal weapons research. Her trial had been swift, the evidence circumstantial but damning, the sentence inevitable. Execution by neural disruption, scheduled for public broadcast as a warning to other would-be weapons developers. Cale's employer, a Silvani resistance group operating from the outer colonies, insisted she was innocent. Framed to silence research that would have revolutionized medical treatment but threatened certain pharmaceutical monopolies. They had documentation, witness testimony, expert analysis. Cale hadn't read any of it. He didn't particularly care about innocence or guilt. He cared that the contract paid well and that extracting someone from a maximum security coalition facility was exactly the kind of challenge he excelled at. He infiltrated the detention level using falsified credentials, a compromised security protocol he'd purchased from a corrupt administrator, and 30 years of experience moving through spaces where he wasn't supposed to be. The facility was designed to be impenetrable, which meant it had exactly the kinds of vulnerabilities that designers never imagined anyone would exploit. Neera's cell was in deep isolation, the wing where they kept the most dangerous or politically sensitive prisoners. When Cale bypassed the electronic lock and opened her cell door, he found her standing in the center of the small space. Her skin was absolute black, the darkest shade Silvani achieved, which his cultural briefing said indicated pure terror. Her ears were flat against her skull. She was thin from poor detention conditions, her prison uniform hanging loose on her frame, but her eyes were sharp and defiant despite obvious fear. "You're early," she said, her voice hoarse from disuse or screaming. Cale couldn't tell which. "Execution isn't scheduled until tomorrow." And Cale realized with sinking understanding, she thought he was her executioner. That someone had decided not to wait for the formal execution and had sent him to kill her quietly in her cell where there would be no witnesses, no broadcast, no final statement. She thought he was here to murder her. "I'm not here to kill you," Cale said quickly, holding up his hands to show they were empty of weapons. "I'm here to get you out." Neera's skin flickered with colors Cale didn't recognize from his briefing, confusion mixed with disbelief and terror that hadn't abated at all. Her ears remained flat against her skull. "That's what they all say. Make it quick. Don't pretend this is rescue when we both know what you are." "I'm an extraction specialist," Cale said, keeping his voice calm despite the mental clock ticking in his head. Security would notice his presence soon. "Hired by Silvani Resistance to extract you before tomorrow's execution. We have maybe 10 minutes before lockdown protocols activate. I need you to come with me now." Neera backed against the cell wall, her skin cycling through patterns that suggested she was trying to decide if this was a cruel trick or a genuine offer. "Why would anyone rescue me? My own people testified against me at trial. My research was deemed too dangerous. The coalition wants me dead, and no one cares enough to intervene." "Someone cares enough to pay me a substantial amount of money," Cale said pragmatically. "Whether you're innocent or guilty isn't my concern. Getting you out alive is, but I can't accomplish that if you won't trust me for the next 10 minutes. He pulled a small data chip from his jacket. "Your colleague Dr. Thesvar sent this. Said you'd recognize his encryption signature as proof I'm who I claim to be." Neera stared at the chip like it might be explosive. Slowly, her skin shifted from absolute black to dark, uncertain grays. "Thesvar. He was at my trial. He sat in the gallery and didn't speak for me." "He couldn't," Cale said. Speaking for you would have meant arrest for conspiracy, so he went underground and hired me instead. Now please, we're wasting critical time deciding whether to trust the one person offering you an escape route." Nira's ears lifted slightly from their flat terror position. Her skin continued cycling through uncertain colors, not belief, but maybe the desperate possibility of belief. Finally, she took a step forward. "If this is a trick," she said, her voice shaking, "if you're here to kill me and you're making me complicit in my own execution by pretending to offer rescue, then I'm doing a terrible job of it by standing here arguing while security closes in," Kale interrupted. "Come on, we leave now or we both die here." Nira took another step, then another. When she reached the cell door, she paused one more time, looking at Kale with eyes that had clearly stopped expecting anything except death. "I'm trusting you," she said. "Don't make me regret it." "I'll do my best," Kale replied, and led her into the corridor. Getting into the facility had been challenging. Getting out with a terrified scientist, who still half believed Kale was her executioner despite his protests, was exponentially harder. Nira followed him through the detention wing, but her movements were hesitant, her skin flickering with colors that Kale's crash course in Sylvani biology said indicated she was one panic attack away from complete breakdown. Every sound made her flinch. Every turn in the corridor made her skin darken as if expecting ambush. When they encountered a security patrol, Kale had to physically pull Nira into a maintenance alcove, covering her mouth when she started to speak, not to silence her, but because her skin was flashing with colors that would draw attention even if she stayed quiet. "I need you to hold it together," he whispered urgently once the patrol passed. "We're almost to the extraction point, then you can fall apart all you want, but right now, I need you functional." Nira's eyes met his, and he saw it clearly. She still didn't believe she was being rescued. She thought this was an elaborate method of execution, that any moment Kale would reveal his true purpose and complete his mission. But she was also desperate enough to cling to the slim possibility that he was telling the truth. They navigated through maintenance corridors that Kale had memorized from facility schematics, bypassed security checkpoints using his falsified codes, and reached the waste disposal area where Kale's contact had positioned an emergency transport pod. When Kale opened the pod and gestured for Nira to enter, she balked. "You want me to get into an enclosed space with you, away from any witnesses?" Her skin darkened to near black again. "This is it, isn't it? This is where you kill me. Away from cameras, away from anyone who might question what happened." Kale's patience, already strained by 30 minutes of high-stress extraction, finally snapped. "If I wanted you dead, I could have killed you in your cell and left you there. No one would have questioned it. Instead, I've risked my life sneaking through a coalition facility with alarms about to trigger. So either get in the pod and accept that maybe you're actually being rescued, or stay here and wait for real executioners. Your choice." The harsh reality seemed to cut through Nira's terror better than gentle reassurance had. She stared at him for a long moment, then climbed into the pod, her skin still showing uncertain grays. Kale followed, sealed the hatch, and launched them through the waste disposal system, the least monitored exit route from the facility. As the pod accelerated through the disposal tunnels, Nira sat rigid in her restraints, her skin flickering between terror and disbelief. "If you're really rescuing me," she said quietly, "thank you, and if you're not, just make it quick." Kale didn't respond. There was nothing to say that would convince her until they reached the safe house and she saw her colleague waiting. Sometimes you just had to let reality prove your intentions. The emergency pod deposited them at a safe house in the industrial sector, far from coalition security jurisdiction. Kale's contact, Kesthel, a Sylvani who'd been coordinating the resistance's efforts, was waiting when they emerged. When Nira saw him, her skin finally shifted from terror black and uncertain gray to something approaching normal colors. "Kes," she said, her voice breaking, "is this real? Am I really?" "You're safe," Kes confirmed, his own skin showing relieved colors. "Dr. Morrison kept his contract. You're out." Nira collapsed into a chair, and for the first time since Kale had opened her cell door, she fully processed that she'd been rescued rather than executed. Her skin cycled rapidly through colors, relief, disbelief, delayed fear catching up with her, gratitude. The entire time I thought you were my executioner," she said to Kale, her ears drooping with exhausted shame. I'm sorry, I should have trusted. You had no reason to trust, Kale interrupted. From your perspective, a stranger showed up claiming rescue right before your scheduled execution. That's exactly what a clever killer would say. Your suspicion was rational survival instinct. He accepted his payment from Kess, verified the transfer, and prepared to leave. His contract was complete, but before he reached the door, he turned back to Nira. For what it's worth, he said, I did read your research while planning the extraction. You weren't developing weapons, you were trying to cure the Silvani wasting disease that's been killing children for years. Someone decided that cure was too valuable to let you give away for free, so they framed you as dangerous to protect their profit margins. Nira's skin shifted to colors Kale had learned meant profound emotion. You believe I'm innocent? I believe you're inconvenient to powerful people, which in my experience is usually the same as being right about something important, Kale said. Good luck staying alive long enough to prove it. 6 weeks later, Kale received a message. Dr. Nuraves had published her research from an undisclosed location, releasing it freely across coalition space. The resulting medical revolution was already saving lives. She was still wanted by the same interests that had framed her, but now she was famous enough that killing her would create more problems than it solved. The message included a bonus payment Kale hadn't negotiated for and a personal note. You came to rescue me when I was certain only executioners remained. You proved that sometimes the terrifying stranger is the answer to prayers you stopped believing would be answered. Thank you for being patient with my fear and for seeing past my suspicion to complete the rescue anyway. You didn't just save my life, you saved what my life could accomplish. Kale filed it with his other successful contracts. But sometimes, when extraction jobs went wrong and targets didn't trust him, he remembered Nira's terror-black skin and her certainty that he was there to kill her. And he found a little more patience for people who had every reason to mistake rescue for execution. Because fear makes sense when the world has given you reasons to expect death. And sometimes, the most important part of rescue is being willing to be misunderstood until reality proves your intentions.